Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you all for coming all the way here. I believe the stairs and everything was a little bit, I don't know, maybe a bit difficult for you. Training, yeah. So welcome to COSMOHUB coworking space. Today marks the day when we open this series of events that we named A Different Perspective, basically hosting people from different countries, all those who are not born here, and discussing why they choose Bosnia and Herzegovina for a living place actually. These people are usually called expats. However, we here don't like framing and naming, so we just call them people who come to live to Bosnia and Herzegovina. And basically this syntax, coming to live here, is what strikes our attention. You know, that's the point where we want to see, okay, why? I mean, basically all Bosnians are asking, okay, why? So we invited Nick Teunissen.
Yep.
Nick, sorry for mispronouncing your surname. I did my best. So, for those of you who might ask, who is Nick? I believe you read all the bio on social media, so there is no need to repeat. But just in short, Nick is a Dutch artist, writer, actor, political commentator, and director of Platform Hero Foundation, among other things. It's just like very narrow. Yep. So, and I also would like to point, he wrote a book, Looking for Esmir. There's also a Bosnian translation available. So, yeah, I'll give the floor to Nick.
Thank you, Marina.
I'll just be like here.
Yep. Once more, thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you for attending this in English. Kaže, ja učim bosanski, ali pričati je teško, and especially when we really dive into certain topics, it's very difficult for me to express myself in Bosnian yet. So give me 2 years, and then I will do it fluently. So that's why I hope you don't mind. I will do this in English. Mubina and I agreed upon the fact that we would do it like sometimes as a conversation, in order also for you to give the chance to just ask questions. So please feel free to break into whatever I say. I have no problem with that whatsoever. You can also do it in Bosnian if you want them, or I will translate it for me. Feel free. It's always a little bit difficult to start telling about yourself. In the first place, because I talk a lot. I'm a creative person, and creative people have the tendency to talk a lot. And this I did during a very short video clip, which was recorded by Rahatland. And it was very spontaneous, and that led to an enormous amount of views, which I was a little bit shocked about, to be quite honest with you. And that's how Mubina found me, and she asked me, Nick, is it possible to have a coffee? And then to see whether you would be able to tell us something about your background, or just like Mubina told us, the raison d'etre, why am I here in Bosnia and Herzegovina? But before I do that, I also as an event organizer and producer, I want to ask you, kak ste, bujrum? I also want to ask for a small applause for COSMOHUB, because this is not very usual that they organize this. Because this is wonderful, trying to organize these meetings in which we can connect. And when it comes to theater, that's the core principle why I do what I do. I want to connect with people, and I want to share stories, and that's at the core of my work. But let me just start first off by why I am here. And this is quite often a question I receive from Bosnian people. So, Nick, why? And there's one very simple, straightforward answer. The first one was love. So I fell in love with a Bosnian person way back in time, 17 years ago, when I was still living on Hollandia. So that's one part of the story. And the second part of the story is that during, well, let me scroll a little bit back. During my primary school, high school, we had a lot of Bosnian refugee children in our classes, and they became my classmates. And they told some things about Bosnia. So we thought we knew something about Bosnia. And in the end, it turned out to be, for me, personally speaking, knowing nothing whatsoever. What do I mean by that? When I started very young as an actor and performer, I was, I think, 16 years of age. And we made a pre-stuff during high school, which is normally how it works. So you try to learn the craft during your first years in high school, and then you gradually go to university, whatever academia you would follow. And we had these wonderful people who would make music, piano, but also write texts. And there was one lady in my class called Amala, and Amala shared her story with one of our teachers. They didn't tell us anything about what it was, nothing about the content, but they shared it. And it was in the middle, during the middle of the Bosnian War. I think this is 1993, 1994, something like that. And they turned it into a song. And my musical teacher asked me, Nick, would you please sing this? And it's called Bosnia. So my first ever song on stage was about Bosnia and about Amala's story. And of course, I didn't know anything back then that it was Amala's song, but I sang it. And so throughout the years, I connected a lot with Bosnian people until I met my partner in 2008. And then I learned that I knew nothing whatsoever about Bosnia Herzegovina in general. What do I mean by that one? Well, Hollandia, born in Amsterdam. When it comes to Bosnia in general, not only from an artistic perspective, but also from when it comes to the whole social discourse within Hollandia itself, nothing whatsoever is known about Bosnia. Everything about Bosnia is being reduced to Srebrenica, which is of course very important, but when they talk about Srebrenica, they only talk about usually they don't even have the figures right, it's 8,000 Muslim men, something like that it would be, or about Dutchbat, and that's it. That's the only thing that we are being told about Bosnia-Herzegovina. Nothing whatsoever about its beautiful history, about its beautiful people, about the resilience of the people who came to Hollandia and built a new life, something which Dutch people, I'm talking about myself by the way, never ever experienced during the whole life. So that fascinated me, not only as a human being, but also as an artist. Because I met a lot of friends and family members. In the end, they became my second father and mother, my parents-in-law, and nothing was known in Hollandia about it. And I thought, I think I have to change that in all humbleness, not being kakskaas, not being melogomaan, like I'm going to change the narrative in Hollandia, but I thought we have to do something about it because we have to make a start. And that is the reason why, like Mobina already told you, I wrote, first of all, a play, which is called One Way Ticket. I'm going to perform it within a week and a half again in Hollandia. We produced it in 2017, but we are still being asked to perform it. And of course, that one I, by the way, do with my own small NGO, which Mobina also mentioned, Platform Hero Foundation, which is named after the people who've experienced the war and which I hold in high regard, my own Bosnian family, the Hero family, from Dobrinja originally, now living in Hadžici. Just so you know. Turned that into a pre-stuff, and then, instantly I felt overwhelmed by the reactions of the people. And why? Because I felt quite naive. When I performed it, Perfect Put, it's about Sarajevo, the siege, and the way in which the siege reappears during our relationship in the successive years after that, after we met each other, and how you can transform, or try to transform, trauma into healing. If that's ever possible, by the way, that's a question which I just leave, but that's the core principle of this prayer stuff, and it's a prayer stuff about love and about resilience, and we performed it, but one of the key elements, one of the key dramaturgical elements of the play is the Tunnel of Hope, because my partner fled through the Tunnel of Hope in November 1994, after experiencing, for 2.5 years, the war, being very young, by the way, at that moment in time, and when I would play the prayer stuff, I always open with a letter, and the letter describes my partner sending a letter by the Red Cross to his parents in Dobrinja, telling about the way in which my partner entered the tunnel, went through the tunnel, and then reappeared at the end of the tunnel with his little brother, who was like a fixer, helping people throughout the tunnel with all the stuff they used to carry, old people, etc., etc. It's very, very moving and very, very, a very heavy letter. And I start with that. And after that, I try to give a little bit of air and also a little bit of Bosnian humor after this, because you cannot keep focused for an hour and a half, only focusing on these heavy emotions. But to cut the story short, that's where I opened with this letter. And it took me, I think, at least 4 performances to realize that afterwards there were people sitting, because I performed very intimately, sometimes just for 50 people or for not only 200 people. It's great, but it's a very intimate predstav. And there was one lady I shall never forget sitting here in front of me, and there's also a piece of the song of Što te nema, of course, in it. Translated, it's pola Bosnian, pola na Holandskom. And she was sitting in front of me, she was crying, and her husband sitting next to her as well. And afterwards, we spent at least like an hour talking, and I learned that she also went through the tunnel of hope. He had been fighting in Kromoy, he got injured, etc., etc., etc. And then I realized, like, okay, this is of course not only the story of my partner, it's the story of thousands of people. And once again, it has never been told in Holland. Nothing, ništa. And I was shocked by that.
Sorry, Nick, may I interrupt you?
Yes, you may do everything, yes.
I would like to jump in just to ask, I mean, when you're saying that there's nothing about Bosnia in the Netherlands, like, were you like aware of the, how to frame it, like, of the influence the Netherlands had, like, in Srebrenica and in general in the war, like, the position they took? Were you taught that in the school?
We until this very day, Mubina, we are being told nothing. And the things that enter into the curriculum are only about 8,000, and hopefully they would have the number right, 8,373, if I'm correct, the people we found, because if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, but we still are looking for at least 7,000 people who are missing, aren't we? But even that is not being done properly, and it's always focused upon the Dutch part of the Voynich, of the army. No, nothing whatsoever to answer your question. And one of my lady friends, Alma Mustafic, who is also a very activist when it comes to theater and working as a professor in the University of Utrecht, is very, very outspoken about this. And she tries to get this into the curriculum. It happens, but it's very slow. And what is it, 30 years onwards, aren't we? Yes, this year it's 25 years, 30 years onwards. So 30, pardon me, yep. Which is, to me, it's unfathomable. I cannot wrap my mind around it. And it has to do with the social discourse in Hollandia. I don't think that I have to explain to you that we are right now being governed by the extreme right-winged government with Geert Wilders at the helm of our country.
So basically it's all like from a private curiosity, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely,
private,
yeah. And also
connections and all the people you met that you had that knowledge that you gained.
Yeah, and also I think we have to really start connecting our countries, not only about the war, of course, because what I also told during the interview for the Heartland, like, it's a beautiful country, and we have so much so much beautiful history, songs, music, culture should be an export product, because a lot of people who come from Hollandia, friends or whatever, who've never, and I gave the example of my mother, and it's not a lie, you can ask her, I can telephone her, are mesmerized by the beauty of its nature. These are such small things. For example, if you, in Holland, Sveeravno, ovdje ima planine, and the moment you finish your work and you look outside, it does something with your brain, and then going to Mount Trebević, drinking coffee, is something which I think for Bosnian people is very normal. But for a Dutch guy, or Dutch woman, or whatever, this is like mesmerizing. So I think that's a unique selling point. So I sometimes try to push, especially young people who are entrepreneurs, like, go for it, use that in a positive way, not misuse it, but use these unique selling points. Not only the war, by the way, I think not that much is being told yet about the war, mind you, when it comes to a cultural scene. A little bit critical about that one. I think you should, because in the end, this is also, I think, a part of healing. I know it's a very heavy topic, but I think we should. But to cut the story short, it's not only about the war, of course. And I know that some people will like telling me, Nick, don't focus only on this war. And I say, I do not. But we are still living. Political commentator, sorry for that one. I cannot flip that switch. We're still living in the aftermath of that war, and we're living in the aftermath of the a blueprint that was imposed upon this beautiful country by my people, with all due respect, by the Western Hemisphere, who put this Dayton peace agreement into this country. And until this very day, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a Buddhist, if you're a Roma, if you're a Jew, you cannot become one of the three prime ministers of this country, if I'm correct. So, which to my information is called apartheid. Well, that's something the Dutch are very good at. I can assure you that one. We have a history with that, not only in South Africa, but also in Indonesia, of course. So, and just like I told you about the person who is now at the helm of Hollandia, is a blatant racist. This is an understatement, by the way. To me, it's the Karadzic of the lower lands. Sorry, I'm quite outspoken about that one. And during the last 20 years, our country has completely changed. So it's not something that happened overnight, and we have to deal with that. But when it comes to, that's why I mentioned it, when it comes to the story of Srebrenica, of course, this for Geert Wilders is something which shouldn't be mentioned, or at least be used to show that, in this case, his words, Muslims weren't, how did they put it? Or was it Boris Johnson who said, the Muslims also weren't angels, or something like that, quote, rozumiem. So that's the framework in which they frame these topics, Bosnia in general. So, to give you an example, my mother, she's a Krajca, and she never speaks any bad word about Bosnia Herzegovina. And we have a couple of newspapers in Hollandia, and one of them was abolished after the Second World War because it was a Nazi newspaper. But 40 years ago, it was being republished again. The Telegraaf, it's called, and it's downright extremist, far-right extremist. And then there was this article, to give you an example, there was this article about Visoko. We have, I think, 100 contingent, of Vojnici, a group of sorry?
Group of soldiers?
Soldiers, yes. Yeah, a group of soldiers from Hollandia who are here because of the peacekeeping, something like that. What? And they come in these heavy panzered vehicles, and because they are being fed the whole propaganda machine of that's still war. I have one lady, when I go to the dentist in Hollandia, and she's at the counter, and then she says, Nick, stai maar, because pola godine, and then I come back for a checkup or something. And then she says, where are you living? In Timbuktu it was, to make a joke, rozumiem. But it's not a joke. It goes very deep. And then she says, yeah, that country where still bombs are going on. What the hell are you doing there? Blah, 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 blah. And this is a very, very nice lady.
Sorry, Nick, it happens nowadays, not 10 years ago.
No, I'm talking about...
in 2025.
Yes, absolutely, in 2025. And I'm talking about... this was I think 2 years ago that she mentioned this one, there are still bombs going off, so she thought it was a war. and until this very day, Jacinta she's called, and sorry, don't write that one down. But she's a wonderful lady, by the way, but she's completely raised in this, it's sad, it's tragic, by the way. It never opened their minds. They're being raised in this bubble, in this fantasy land in which everything that is a little bit further than Hrvatska is what happens there? It's where the wolves, ... Vuko, Tisnar. I don't want to give that sentence. I think you know what I mean. And that's the way in which it is framed. Are you okay?
I need some water.
Oh, no. So to cut the story short, when it came to the article, to give you an example, there was this article about our boys in Bosnia, and then you saw Visoko, and the first picture they had was this soldier, completely in tenue, and he was doing this to the camera, like that, and behind them was a shop with, of course, with dolls who were dressed with the headscarf or in hijab or whatever. And so it's instantly framed as Visoko. Now, you can fill in whatever you want to do, and if you start to read that text, they were walking through Visoko as if it was a war zone. And to me, and I think to a lot of people, this is just unfathomable. But there it is, in a newspaper. So my friend Alma, she sent, of course, a huge letter towards this this novinar, telling him what was wrong about it. And he started to protect himself because he knew it was very wrong. Hvala Bogu, today, as of late, we have people, Hollandi, who fled to Hollandia during the war and who are now at an academic level and who can counter this. And Alma's such a person. I'm really, really very proud of her father. He was one of the technicians of the Dutch battalion who was delivered to the Serbs and shot. And they found him only, I think, in 2008, if I'm correct. And Alma is perhaps you're acquainted with it, she fought against the Dutch government, and in the end she won, because they tried to say that he wasn't on their payroll, so to speak. Well, Alma countered that, and she won. In America, for example, because this was a jurisdictional case, I think 10 years ago, if I'm correct, don't know that correctly, it would have been booming. She would have been there. Hollandi, just one talk show, ito. And that gives you something to think about when I am quite honest and open to watch you. So, because this whole concept of framing has been there for at least, I would say, 40 years. And it has been building up, and it has poisoned the heads of a lot of people. Until we right now have this far right-wing government, and don't you make any mistake, because some people say like, yeah, but it's only it's only like 10,000 people. Scratch the surface, ladies and gentlemen, and we have 4 right extremist parties who are completely on the side of Israel, in this case, who are completely into Zionism and who want to transform Hollandia into an ethnocracy. It's quite there. He's outspoken about that one, Geert Wilders, by the way. He had this, I think there was this rally in 2015 in Dresden. And then he told us that Israel was an example as a political model for Hollandia. Well, that tells you that it's going to be an ethnocracy. And right now they have the majority, and of course we have it's in the government right now at this moment in time, which is a caring government. It's a government which is like has to exit right now. I forgot the word. Sorry. Transforming, yeah. They're just like switching in between, yeah. And people say like Srećebiću because now we have like the Greens coming in, Srećebiću, but we have millions of people voting for this one. Well, that's, I don't want to sound depressing, but to give you an example of what's happening behind the scenes, and I think a lot of people in the eastern part of Europe or in the eastern part of the planet in general are not aware of that. Still think that we are still in this Dutch Valhalla, because they were very good during the 90s in window dressing. And they did achieve some things, absolutely right, but if you scratch the surface, there it is. And it's been going on ever since the late 90s, just before 9/11. And of course 9/11 helped them very much to propel this whole narrative of East against West. It was the news story, of course, of the Cold War, but then pasted upon Islam, like a monologue, like one huge front which you should fight against. So that's the background with which we have to deal. But when it comes to Bosnia in general, and sorry, I'm talking absolutely politics, but I don't know if you want that, Martina, but I have to tell you because...
I need to cut him, okay, so now you are here, and how that happened, Nick?
How that happened? Because of love, because of this drive, sorry for that one, but then you know where I come from, because I think we should battle this. I think artists, by the way, this is also something which I'm convinced of. I think that artists should be at the very forefront, at the front line, almost, of this fight against... or in this fight against humanity, because that's what's happening right now. So that's my own personal opinion, but that's what it should be, to my best of knowledge. So I came to Bosnia to listen to these stories and to gradually become intimately involved with the people. Until this very day, I always feel that I'm greeted with open arms. Which is beautiful and which is very touching to me. Not cheesy speaking, but you are open and you are curious. And sometimes, I think you already saw it, I'm getting sometimes a little bit emotional when I talk about my own, furious by the way, when I talk about my own hometown and country, because it used to be like that as well. Holland was very curious. Where do we come from? Who are you? By the way, when a lot of people fled from Bosnia during the 1990s, they were welcomed with open arms, and right now they're very much integrated into Dutch society, beautiful jobs, speak the language, etc., etc. By the way, it comes down to your, when we talk about integration, it comes down to your own definition of integration, of course, because right now integration in Hollandia is equal to assimilation. That's something I think very different. But that's what mesmerized me, and then you start noticing the differences between two cultures. And if we look at it from an artistic perspective, if we use that as a prism, I think that you can easily, also from a historical perspective, state that Hollandia is a money-driven country, whereas a country as Bosnia is much more a cultural-driven country. And I think those are the two opposites we have when it comes to, 1,300 kilometers apart from each other. But that would be, for me, one of the main differences. And that translates also into your artistic forms, of course, because what do I mean by that? Well, here in Bosnia, men dance. In Holland, they do not dance. Men sing. In Holland, they do not sing. So culture, that would be my point. I should have meant if you think differently, but culture is much more integrated into society itself. And I think that has to do with, this is my theatrical, academical perspective, that it has to do with the way in which culture was treated historically in Hollandia. We are a merchant people, so we buy stuff. The VOC, the Dutch East India Company, of course, during the, 16th, 17th century, they would buy stuff, but they didn't get any connection with the audience itself. And that translates to the theater, for example, that there is no natural bond between the audience and that what's happening on stage. And why is that? Because it's just of no interest to the government. Back then as well, because if you look, for example, at France during that era, Louis XIV, I think, the king, he was very much into culture as a patron, and culture was very much a vehicle in order to protest against the government. But in Hollandia, we had a bourgeois government, and there was nothing to protest. There was money, and it was all running okay. And we had like one king, Willem II, if I'm correct, who tried to have some influence, but it never happened. He tried to attack Amsterdam to annul the influence of Holland, of the province of Holland, but it didn't work. So to cut the story short, they didn't need culture to protest or to be socially involved in things. And those are remarkable differences, especially look at what happened with Shakespeare, of course, in England, or Lessing in Germany, in which people asked him to write plays in order to, well, stand up against the ruling classes. So, and in Holland, it is not there. It's just simply not there. They would buy stuff, they would perform it, ito, but there is no natural bond between those two. And that translates directly into this in recent times. So when it comes to Palestine, for example, everything that's happening, we don't have this huge theatrical idols or theater makers in Hollandia who stand up and protest against it. I think I can count them on one hand, and I think that's even much. I have like one friend, Boy Jonkergouw, Cappadopoda, who's right now producing a play made with people from the West Bank, and he's performing it on the 16th of September in Amsterdam. And then we have Ramsi Nasser, who is, I think, also Palestinian, who is very outspoken, but those are two colors, and that's it. And the rest is entertainment. So we don't have that history of activism, of this natural bond between public audience and creativity or artisticity in general. Which is something which you do have. It may be very small, but it's there. Look at I, Carmela, for example. One of my lady friends, Selma Alispahic, who worked for Sartre. She has this wonderful play stuff. I don't know if you're acquainted with it, but I, Carmela, and it's been playing for, I think, for 22 years. That's unfair, because people like it, and it has a huge message, anti-fascism, etc., etc. And people constantly want her to perform that. Two actors, if I'm correct, Selma and a man who recently died of corona. But so it's there, and still you have here when people perform or make praise stuffs here in Bosnia Herzegovina and Bosnia, you have these rows and these people. I think there was a play about Turkey, if I'm correct, or Erdogan, who was very, very angry. But
Wasn't that cancelled?
Was it? Nah, good question. It
was in media, like, and then the embassy also got involved.
Well,
like, it was a diplomatic mess.
Yeah,
as far as I remember,
yeah.
I don't know. And I was like, I mean, you are like from a country that is 100 kilometers away from our country, and then you interfere into what our actors can play or not.
Yeah. Yes, but mind you, we have the same thing going on in Hollandi, because everybody's on the payroll of Israel. And that's why they don't stand up at Azumim. It's very awkward. There's only entertainment. That's a historical point of view, of course. It's there, and it's only about entertainment, not about activism, theater, creativity and activism. But everybody is shutting up. Why? Because nobody wants to have their subsidies cut, because Geert Wilders is very unsatisfied with what you're saying about the state of Israel. So, but Bosnia does stand up. I think so. There is this row, and the very fact that you have this row going on of people standing up, and you have this conversation between Erdogan and these actors and Bosnia Herzegovina and Bosnia, that's quite telling. So that would be one of the main differences between the two countries. I don't hope you're shocked when I tell this, because some people are looking like, what is this guy saying? But there is this huge gap between East and West, and I'm making generalizations. I know that, but I think it is, and I think this has been there for at least 40 to 50 years. I think you can easily see and pinpoint into history where that started to occur. And until this very day, it's been pushed in that frame, which makes it easy also for diplomats, because then you can always say, oh yes, no, that's the Balkans. That's what it is. That's the Balkans. They're the people who have been fighting, quote, fighting centuries with each other. Primeval fights between warlords, quote, quite literally, right? So not Christian, so not organized, so not blah, 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 blah. That's the way in which they perceive it. So it has always been your war, your story. And it's easy for diplomats to then park that story and do nothing with it. Or, and there it comes, insert money into the machine. Because the cultural difference I just told you about a culture-driven country or a money-driven country also says something about the way in which they, diplomatically speaking, treat things that are happening in the eastern part of Europe. They think that if you, and I think that's at least going on for the last 40 years, if you put enough money into the machine, sve će biti u redu. Projects, money, and then somehow it will appease itself. It doesn't work like that. It's the same way they attack Putin. Oh, gas, sell. Something will happen. I think, what is it, like until 5 years ago, everybody was standing with a torta near the first opening of Gazprom's second, including back then our Prime Minister Mark Rutte. So tells you something. And they really think that if you put much more money into a machine, that somehow it will work. Not taking into account that some people just, especially when it's culturally different, just don't simply care if they drag the whole country down the abyss. That problem. As long as we have a greater Serbia, doesn't matter if you have to eat, nema problema. Doesn't matter if you have nothing to hold yourself warm with or whatever. So, sorry for being so into the opposites, but I hope this makes a little bit clear where I come from and why I fell in love with Bosnia. And it's not only a personal story, it's also a story of, I think, also my own discovery of seeing, in the end, how little we knew back in Holland. Nothing, ništa. First time I performed my monodrama in Sutter, there were a couple of novinars, and I said, sorry, I was raised in Walt Disney World to compare it to you, with all due respect. Capa de Porta for you, I have nothing to say. I'm raised like in a lovely family with a lovely youth, and there was nothing wrong, and everything was okay. You could be whatever you want, etc., etc., and you had all the opportunities. It's a Walt Disney World. By the way, this Novina translated it quite literally, and he said Nick grew up in Walt Disney World, so I'm talking about English, but which was funny to me, by the way. But this goes to show what the differences are, and I think I think we are at the beginning of making these connections with between what's happening here in Bosnia and what's happening in Holland. I think we should really make a connection. Why? Because in general, and I think I can say that Dutch people are really interested. By the way, we have 19 million people, so they're not all fascists, but they are very much interested. So, and I think that's a unique selling point. So, this different perspective doesn't have to be politically instantly, but just like I told you, when it comes to nature, when it comes to eco-tourism, for example, look what you've got. I told in the interview, I said the only thing we can learn perhaps from Hollandia is this entrepreneurship, this organizational brain work. Not too much, keep it taman, but because in Hollandia right now it's like too much, and that's also horrific because it's over-organized. But I think that would be a very positive thing to not learn, but to take over from the West. And then this could be, I'm not lying, I think this could be the new Monte Carlo, Stvarno. If you really make an effort for it, especially with the young people, and then people say, yeah, you're too optimistic because you're not aware of what's politically happening here. Sorry, I'm very much aware. But I think you have to take two things into account, pardon me. First of all, if you're young, just like I told you, and you're a Buddhist or an atheist or whatever, or a Jew or whatever, Roma, if I'm correct as well, you cannot become prime minister. So what then is your influence in this country? So there is always this glass ceiling, and sitting on this glass ceiling is Mr. Schmidt. So, and I'm not a very big fan of Mr. Schmidt, to say the least. So, especially not, sorry, about what the man is all, it's apartheid. So what can you do to bypass that apartheid? I think you can bypass that by connecting with the diaspora. And there are a lot of people who really want to invest in this country and who really want to invest in young and elderly people who make something of life here and who are into entrepreneurship. And I think that's the way in which you can bypass all this political, you know what I mean, and then from there out, start building it until this whole political caste becomes obsolete, until it is just like not functioning anymore because we bypass it. And we have so much people living all over the planet, Bosnian people, Canada, America, Hollandia, Germany, whatever, Norway, Sweden, etc., etc. So I think that would, within my view, that would be the way in which we can break out of this impasse. Which is not easy, of course, but I think it's very doable. And one of the things that warmed my heart is, and I'm not trying to be cheesy, Mobina, but that's what you guys are doing. It's here. That's what I'm contacting and connecting people. That's what the guys of Rahatland did as well. They told me, because before we had the interview talking, and they told me, yeah, nobody believed in us. And then we went to the bank, to very young guys, and we took a loan, 300,000 km. Wow. And it worked, but it also could have been a great flop. Didn't turn out to be there like that in the end. But Kappa, Poda, just 150,000 euros invested themselves into this wonderful documentary kind of platform, which is connecting a lot of people all over the world. What is it, like 120,000 views, some people, wonderful, and spreading positivity. And entrepreneurship, and like one guy who came back and now is making chocolates, like I think Mars, somewhere in the northern part of Bosnia.
Was like that 2 days ago?
I think, yeah, wonderful. Yeah. And the Dutch, by the way, are very, very open-minded when it comes to investments, and also very, very, very eager to see what you've got, so to speak, and to see what's in them for them. But well, if it's kapskash, if it's one side of the same medal. Altijd maar, isn't it? Sorry for that one. So that's my recap of why I'm doing what I'm doing. When it comes to the artistic world, it translates into these stories, which from a creative perspective is very interesting to me, the stories that not have been told. And I think so many stories haven't been told. And it's my personal opinion that if you do not outward these stories, not only war, but trauma in general, that you cannot heal. So one of the reasons why I make theater or music or whatever is completely connected to that one. And that's why I made the predstav, Mumina already told you, but also wrote the book, Tražit Esmira. By the way, working a lot with young people, I love that. Of course, I work with a lot of professional actors, but believe me, working with young talents, it's, there is this authenticity which I really like. So right now, I worked with them on the translation of the book into a predstav, which we had, which premiered, that's it, on the 3rd and 4th of July in Zenica, so it's Bosansko narodno pozorište Zenica, and Kakaň, because it's a co-production. And it's going to tour around Europe. We already have a connection with Vienna and Prague and Norway, don't know that one, but Norway, Hollandia next year. So I think and that's also my message, we have to get also out of this echo chamber, also with art and with stories, and out of this echo chamber, and show the people how beautiful it is, and what you have to tell and learn the world is not the other way around. You have something to tell them, not only about the war, but also about the way in which you treat life in general, also spiritual kinds of stuff, because a lot of people lost that. We don't have any huge amount of people who are into religion anymore, Ulani, that like dissipated somewhere during the 70s, and then we had this hippie period and democracia, blah, 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 blah. There it was. And now everybody's telling that they are secular, but then they try to do kapskash when you sit like a Buddha, yoga, but that's not satisfying as well. Then they try to go to on holiday for 4 times a year. That just doesn't work as well. So also when it comes to spirituality, I think Bosnia could be a big example of how you can live I think, more conscious life. So.
But Nick, sorry to jump in, like, isn't that like a paradox, like, given the nature of the war that happened, like, and also nowadays the tensions between various religious parts and strata of the society, like you are talking about spirituality that should like give you peace and all that nice stuff, those feelings like we are all looking for, but then again, I do not feel like it gives you that amount of peace, but on contrary, like I think those like strata, religious strata in our country, that's the way I feel it, like they are more like not actually looking for connecting, like for creating bridges and stuff like that among people in the first place.
Okay. I think.
And I can tell that like firsthand because I also I studied like interreligious studies and peace building, and then I spent some time in Catholic center, and then also in Orthodox, and then in Islamic community, and they all have their own versions of story, you know. But then when it comes to connecting with each other, building those that bridge between people, actually among those 3 peoples, like they are doing nothing. And then you say like the spirituality, you know, it brings peace. It's I don't see it that way.
Okay, I think, but you'd be the judge of that, because who am I to say that? But I think that shortly after the war, religion was very used as a way of survival modus. Like you just get into your own group in order to preserve yourself, and breaking out is something nowhere here. And we have already had this huge load of horrific experiences with this, in my opinion, framing of religion. Because in my belief, religion is very much used, wrongly used, to cover for certain, certain very, very banal almost reasons like money and power, and that would be my personal opinion. But I think that would be, if we talk really about Bosnia, please correct me if I'm wrong. Perhaps I'm saying things that are just like to you, like what on earth is he telling you? But I think it's also connected very much to how do you break out of trauma, because something happened here 30 years ago, and which was so focused on your ethnicity and on your religion, and that I think, and there's not much talk about this, if I'm correct. Correct me if
There is no.
no. So I have, and there's also one of my friends, Sami Puric, was working on a man in this case, trying to go to a psycholog. And he said this, Nick, because he's from Bugojno, if I'm correct. Sorry, Sami, ne znam sigurno. But, and he said there's this huge taboo of man, and he meant his father, sharing his experiences of the war, and he's trying to break through it, a very young guy, I think he's 25, 26, and he's working for the IOM. He's tried he even made a spot with actors from Zenica, like on television or YouTube, like don't be afraid to share your story and to break out, because he said, like, I had a very hard time with my parents who were like completely into their own bubble, whether it would be Islam or Catholic religion or Croatian nationalism, or I don't know which sort of etiquette you want to put onto it, but in my opinion, that would be one main reason also why it's perhaps not so connected with each other. And I think... Oh, sorry.
What about those interreligious meetings that you have? Franciscans are doing it, right? And I was attending at least 4 or 5 already, every year in the end of October in this what is the name? Francis. Yes, what is the name of the church? You know where the brewery is, the beer? No, this big one, oh my God.
The
Katedrala Srca Isusova?
No.
The cathedral.
St. Francis Church.
Oh, near Parliament, next to Parliament.
That one.
Yes. So
We didn't have that one, even also what happened,
It happened at least 20 years, I think.
like
Like every year, and they're always inviting all the head of all the religions in Sarajevo to have 5 minutes talking about peace. They were inspired by the John Paul II, the Pope, and now they are. I was attending. It's very beautiful to see people singing in Lahja in the church, or I don't know. They're
Like,
inviting everybody.
I studied like 2 years ago introductory studies in peace building. No word about that. Like me as a student, like no one told us. And what happened? What happened also? Yeah. But there's no in media. Like I'm the person who.
There is television always. Maybe last year I haven't seen it, but before there were always somebody who was right in the Google interreligious meeting.
Because I also read that the Orthodox, how do you say it? Not episcopal, but the highest person. Yeah, they left that group of interreligious. They have that community interreligious. All those. How do you say it? Predstavnici. Yeah, all representatives, like they were gathered and they had like that community, and they had a web page, like following all those hate crimes and crimes against, I don't know, not humanity, but also they are very much focused on religious issues, like attacks on properties and stuff like that. And then they had that issue that a person like Orthodox patriarch, or however you pronounce it, like he left the meeting and they opted out from that organization. So it was like a few months ago that the patriarch he joined in again, and it was on all news, like flash. They are all together again.
Okay, I'm impressed about it. I just wanted to share that there.
For instance, I didn't know that.
Find this unity among them, different religions here, and for me it's really unique. Sarajevo, because I'm also a foreigner, and for me it's really wow.
Yeah, it is.
I'm from Poland.
Oh, wow.
And I also got married with the guy from Bosnia, so love brought me here. And I'm here 13 years already, so I really also felt like second home in Bosnia is for me. So, so I really feel what you are talking about.
Thank you for affirming. I agree. Hala, yeah. Because sometimes you think like I'm the only one who's experiencing this. So it's very nice to hear somebody saying that as well. Like I'm not fluid.
Okay, but this is your story, so.
No. That's why I said like please break it open, because it's not only about me. Yes, please. If you have anything to say.
Any comments from public, from audience?
Just to
point on the point that you mentioned. Like you mentioned about the leaders. We're talking about leaders.
Yeah, but normal people, ordinary people are way different.
I think that's the problem. Because that's my opinion is that whether the leaders are doing it, the problem is we, the normal people. I'm also a Bosanski Zet. So I also married Bosnian, and I find that the people are hungry. I'm from Malaysia. I'm from Malaysia. We have 3 main ethnicities and many more minorities, and the percentages are very similar to Bosnia.
Wow.
The Muslims are 55%, the Chinese are 30+%, and the Indians are 15%. Very similar to the percentages here. And yet, I had a different experience growing up because my best friend is Chinese and Indian. My daughter wears a Chinese dress with Indian bangles, dance to Indian song, and she's never lived in Malaysia. But she's Malay, and we celebrate everyone's holidays.
The same.
Like we have 21
religions in our
Sounds Yugoslavian almost.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and here, and my wife lost her father during the war, and we live out north in Gradačac. It was frontline as well, and there in Gradačac, no one mixes. And I chose to come here to find work here in Sarajevo. My wife still lives in Gradačac, but I find my life here now for the past 2 years is so different from a small town. I'm not comparing town and all. I lived in so many countries, but the point is, here I can, at least in Gradačac, I cannot talk about the other side. It's a very sensitive topic.
There is a book, sorry to interrupt you, written by Tone Bringa. I don't know if I misspelled pronounced wrongly her name, but that's what she mentioned. Like there is that like a wonderful lifestyle in the 90s in Yugoslavia, in Bosnia in general. Then you had some parts of village where people interacted with each other, and then the other parts like of Bosnia where they just knew each other and they wouldn't interfere into the others. They exist there, we are here, and there was like that huge wall between them. And that explains a lot about the things, how that emerged, the war and all those atrocities. She describes it so lovely in her book. I need to Google it. I can like...
So if I just, one last point I wanted to say is that, so like living here in Sarajevo, my wife's teta all still live here, also in Sarajevo. When they find out that I have Catholic friends, Orthodox Christian Serb friends, Jehovah's Witness friends, other friends from other countries, they're like, why are you friends with them? How do you know Orthodox? How do you know Catholic? I'm like,
who? Yeah.
But these are the people who live in Sarajevo their whole life, and they never cross. I heard people in Lukavica who never came to this side of Sarajevo.
But may I add to what you were saying and telling, because then I think as certain people who look into society from the outside at the beginning, I think that's what you are seeing happening right now in Holland, because it was the same. We used to be very curious, what I told you earlier, like who are you, where you are from, and right now, if you take the topic of Islam, right now this framework, and that's being brought into society, has been working for at least what I told you, 40 years, and I think it's the same what happened here. And there's been this constant bombardment of that you do not belong here, that your history is not part of that country, quite literally. It's being called the Judeo-Christian dominant pillar of society. That's quite a bold statement for a country who has, I think, sent to Auschwitz at least 3/4 of its Jewish population, Hollandia. So this framework is being pushed upon it to separate people from each other. And that's why I think that in the end, it's not about the religion, but it's about this political framework that is being pushed upon it to think that your children or whatever shouldn't wear a Chinese dress or what on earth. But I really do doubt, as a person, and perhaps within 10 years I will think differently, but for now that it's more about the system which is being put upon, which is almost being pressed upon us, instead of our different religions. And if you're being fed that poison for this you and me poison for 40 years, what do you expect? And then when you are being slaughtered, and then when your relatives are still not being found, and sorry, it's also a big trauma. I'm locked in this trauma, and then we have this huge brain drain in this country. So youngsters who want to make something, who want to break through or get the truth pushed forward or across, but they leave. So you end up, in the end, especially in the villages, with people who are close-minded, because the people who are really like open-minded, they left.
And you can't blame them.
And you can blame them. No, Tom, I don't know if you're just suffocating you, if you're just like you guys, living your life, being open, dressing up like you ever want, and then being told like you cannot do this because you're not Chinese. Yeah.
All I'm asking, all I'm trying to push in my own small community, wherever, in Ali Passion or
Thank you.
wherever I am, all I'm saying, just cross the bridge.
Yep, bravo.
Go talk to talk to the people, talk to the others. Hatred comes from ignorance. When you don't know the person, all you can do is just hate or fear.
Yep.
If you can just talk to the person of some other race, some other color, you'll know more. How can you hate people when we are more similar?
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you. That's it. Yeah, that's at the core. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Enjoying, really.
Yeah?
We can eat pizza and keep enjoying. Pizzas are there.
Well, thank you so much for listening to me, because I was told that I had an hour, and I already told Mobina, please cut me short, because...
We will keep talking over pizzas.
Okay. Thank you so much, and hope we stay connected. Thank you.